The earth-shaking roar echoed across the ancient temple grounds, sending birds scattering into the twilight sky. From the shadows emerged Kano, the legendary white python, his massive coils gleaming like moonlit pearls, his amethyst eyes blazing, with a mixture of sorrow and fury. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The temple monks fell to their knees as his voice thundered through the sacred halls. After all these years, after everything we shared, you dare to break our sacred bond? The young man before him, once a child he had raised as his own, stood trembling but defiant, holding an ancient scroll that could change everything. Deep in the mystical mountains of Tibet, where ancient temples cling to misty peaks and wisdom, is carried on the wind, lies the forgotten temple of the Jade Serpent. For centuries, this sacred place had been home to an order of monks who guarded ancient secrets and communed with powerful spirits. Among these spirits, none was more revered than Kano, the immortal white python, whose wisdom was said to be as vast as the mountains themselves. Unlike other temple guardians, Kano was different. His scales held an otherworldly sheen, each one etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. His eyes, a striking shade of amethyst, were said to see not just the present, but glimpses of both past and future. The monks whispered that he was not merely a creature of this world, but a celestial being who had chosen to remain on earth for reasons known only to him. The temple itself was a marvel of ancient architecture, its golden spires reaching toward the heavens like fingers trying to touch the stars. Intricate carvings of serpents wound their way up the columns, telling stories of wisdom, protection, and sacrifice. The air within the temple grounds was always warm, regardless of the mountain's bitter cold, as if Kano's presence itself provided warmth to this sacred space. For centuries, Kano had lived in solitude, watching generations of monks come and go, maintaining his distance while fulfilling his duty as the temple's guardian. Though respected and revered, he remained alone, carrying a sadness in his heart that none could understand. The older monks often spoke of how, in the dead of night, they would hear his soft, melancholic song echoing through the temple halls, a sound so beautiful and sorrowful it brought tears to their eyes. But fate had other plans for the solitary guardian. On a stormy night, when thunder crashed against the mountain peaks and lightning illuminated the temple in brilliant flashes, everything changed. The temple bells began to ring, their deep resonance cutting through the storm's fury. At first, the monks thought it was the wind, but Kano knew better. He felt a pull, an ancient magic stirring in his blood, calling him to the temple gates. There, wrapped in rain-soaked cloths and placed carefully at the temple's threshold, lay a tiny bundle. As lightning flashed again, Kano saw the infant's face, a baby boy, no more than a few days old, with striking golden eyes that seemed to mirror his own supernatural gaze. Beside the child lay a simple wooden amulet, carved with symbols so old that even Kano, with his centuries of knowledge, could barely decipher them. The monks gathered around, their lanterns casting dancing shadows on the temple walls. "Great. Kano," the head monk spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "What should we do?" But Kano had already made his decision. Something about this child spoke to the very core of his being, awakening feelings he thought had died centuries ago. With gentle movements that belied his massive size, Kano coiled around the infant, using his body to shield the child from the storm's fury. The baby, instead of crying in fear, reached out with tiny hands to touch Kano's scales, giggling as they shimmed under his fingers. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. The symbols on Kano's scales began to glow. With an intense light, and a warm golden aura enveloped both the python and the child. The head monk gasped, recognizing ancient prophecies coming to life before his eyes. "The child of two worlds," he whispered, "one born to bridge the gap between the spiritual and mortal realms." Other monks fell to their knees, beginning to chant prayers of protection and blessing, but Kano paid them no mind. His entire being was focused on the tiny life before him, this child who had awakened something long dormant in his immortal heart. With a voice that resonated with power and tenderness, Kano made a proclamation that would echo through the temple halls for years to come. "This child is now under my protection. He shall be known as Kai, and he shall learn the ways of both worlds." The monks watched in amazement as Kano gentle lifted the child with his coils, cradling him as carefully as any parent would. The storm outside seemed to respond to this moment, the thunder softening to a gentle rumble, the rain easing to a soft patter against the temple roof. It was as if nature itself was blessing this unusual union. As Kano carried Kai to his private chambers deep within the temple, he felt a change coming over him. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for centuries began to fade, replaced by something new: purpose, hope, and most surprisingly, love. He looked down at the sleeping infant, watching as tiny fingers clutched one of his scales like a lifeline, and made a silent vow. He would protect this child with every fiber of his being, teach him everything he knew, and ensure that he grew to understand both the mortal and spiritual worlds he was destined to bridge. Little did Kano know that this decision would set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of both worlds, leading to choices that would test the bonds of love, loyalty, and destiny itself. As he settled into his chambers, creating a warm nest for his new charge, the ancient prophecies carved into the temple walls seemed to pulse with new life, as if awakening to the presence of the child who would one day change everything. The temple monks spent that night in deep meditation, sending prayers into the universe for the protection of this unusual pair. They knew they were witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary, though none could predict just how far-reaching the consequences of this night would be. As dawn broke over the mountain peaks, casting golden light through the temple windows, Kano and Kai slept peacefully. The giant white python curled protectively around the tiny human child, their breaths synchronizing in perfect harmony. In the days that followed, the temple came alive with a new energy. Monks who had spent decades in solemn contemplation found themselves smiling at the sight of the mighty Kano tenderly caring for his adopted son. They watched as the python used his massive body to create a protective playground for the infant, his coils becoming walls and cradle both. When Kai cried, Kano would soothe him with gentle humming, the same melodious sounds that had once been songs of loneliness, now transformed into lullabies of love. As the seasons began to change, bringing new colors to the mountain landscape, Kano's transformation became even more apparent. The sadness that had lingered in his amethyst eyes for centuries was replaced by a fierce joy, a protective love that seemed to make his very scales shine brighter. The temple itself seemed to respond to this change, its ancient stones warming with new life, its gardens blooming with unprecedented vigor. Yet in quiet moments, when the moon hung high over the Mountain peaks and Kai slept peacefully in his protective embrace. Kano would contemplate the magnitude of the task before him. Raising a human child would be challenging enough for any guardian, but he knew that Kai was no ordinary child. The symbols on the wooden amulet found with him spoke of a destiny that would require strength, wisdom, and courage beyond measure. As Kano watched his adopted son sleep, he silently vowed to prepare him for whatever challenges lay ahead, while protecting the innocent joy that made Kai's laughter echo through the temple halls like music. Time flowed like the mountain streams in the temple of the Jade Serpent, marking the passage of Kai's childhood with moments both extraordinary and tender. By the age of 5, the boy had grown into a bright and curious child, his golden eyes shining with intelligence and wonder. His unusual upbringing by Kano created a childhood unlike any other, filled with lessons that bridged the mortal and spiritual realms. Each morning began with Kano teaching Kai the ancient meditation techniques of the temple. The massive python would coil himself into a perfect circle, creating a sacred space where Kai would sit cross-legged, learning to quiet his mind and connect with the energies that flowed through the mountain. The monks would often pause in their daily duties, mesmerized by the sight of the tiny boy sitting perfectly still within the protective circle of his serpentine father. Kano's teaching methods were unique, blending physical training with spiritual wisdom. He taught Kai to move like water, using his own serpentine grace as an example. The python would demonstrate how to flow around obstacles rather than confronting them head-on, a lesson that applied to both physical movement and life's challenges. Together they would practice in the temple's courtyard, Kai mimicking Kano's fluid movements, while the python's massive body created obstacle courses and training grounds. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. When Kai was learning to read the ancient texts, Kano would wrap his coils around the boy, creating a living chair that adjusted perfectly to support him. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. His scales would glow softly, providing light for late-night reading sessions. The python's vast knowledge, accumulated over centuries, poured forth in stories and lessons that captivated the young boy's imagination. But it wasn't all serious study. Kano had discovered a playful side he never knew he possessed. He would use his long body to create slides and swings for Kai, turning the sacred temple grounds into a magical playground. The sound of Kai's laughter, echoing through the ancient halls, became as much a part of daily temple life as the monks' chanting and the ringing of prayer bells. The temple monks played their part too, teaching Kai the human aspects of life that Kano couldn't provide. They showed him how to write with a brush, how to tend the temple gardens, and how to prepare the sacred herbs used in ceremonies. Yet even in these human lessons, Kano was always nearby, his massive form a constant, reassuring presence. One particular lesson stood out in the temple's memory. It was during the Harvest Moon Festival, when Kai was 7. The monks had been teaching him about the importance of balance in all things. Kano, seeing an opportunity for a deeper lesson, created an elaborate balance course using his body. He positioned himself across different levels of the temple courtyard, creating narrow bridges and platforms that Kai had to traverse. "Balance, my son," Kano's voice resonated as Kai carefully walked along his scaled body. "Is not just about keeping your feet steady. It is about finding harmony between different aspects of yourself." As Kai moved from one coil to another, Kano continued his lesson. You are unique, Kai. You bridge two worlds, the physical and the spiritual. Learning to balance these aspects of yourself will be your greatest challenge and your greatest strength. The boy nodded solemnly, his small face serious with concentration as he navigated the living obstacle course. When he reached the end, standing proudly on Kano's head, the python's eyes glowed with pride. The monks who had gathered to watch burst into applause, their usually stoic faces breaking into wide smiles. As Kai grew, so did his abilities. By the age of 8, he had begun to show signs of extraordinary spiritual sensitivity. He could see the energy patterns that flowed through the temple, visible to him as streams of colored light. Kano recognized these manifestations as the emergence of Kai's destined powers, the very abilities mentioned in the ancient prophecies. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves danced in the mountain breeze, Kano decided it was time for a crucial lesson. He led Kai to a hidden chamber deep within the temple, a place few monks had ever seen. The walls were covered in luminous crystals that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "This chamber," Kano explained, his voice echoing softly, "holds the memories of ages past. It is here that I first learned of your coming, though I didn't understand it then." The python's massive body moved with deliberate grace as he positioned himself around the chamber's perimeter, his scales reflecting the crystal light in mesmerizing patterns. "Watch closely, Kai," he instructed. As the boy observed, Kano's scales began to glow with an intense light, each one revealing ancient symbols that seemed to float in the air. The crystals in the chamber responded, their light synchronizing with Kano's scales to create a spectacular display of moving images. Kai watched in awe as the light show told stories of ancient times, of spirits and humans living in harmony, of great battles between light and darkness, and of a prophecy speaking of a child who would restore balance when the world needed it most. The boy's golden eyes reflected the dancing lights, his mind absorbing the profound implications of what he was seeing. "You are not just my son," Kano said softly, his amethyst eyes glowing with emotion. "You are a bridge between worlds, born with the power to unite what has been divided. The amulet found with you bears symbols of both the celestial and terrestrial realms. It is no accident that you came to us that stormy night." Kai touched the wooden amulet that he always wore around his neck, feeling it warm beneath his fingers. "But why me?" he asked, his young voice filled with wonder and a touch of uncertainty. Kano's massive head lowered to Kai's level, his eyes meeting his son's gaze. "The universe has its own wisdom, little one. What matters is not why you were chosen, but what you choose to do with the gifts you've been given." His voice softened as he continued, "And know this. Whatever path lies ahead, you will never walk it alone." The python's words carried the weight of truth, resonating with the ancient power held within the chamber's crystals. Kai stepped forward and pressed his forehead against Kano's scaled head, a gesture of love and trust that had become natural between them. The crystals in the chamber pulsed with warm light, as if blessing this moment of connection between the immortal guardian and his chosen child. That night, as Kai slept curled within Kano's protective coils, the python remained awake, watching the stars through the temple windows. He knew that the years ahead would bring challenges that would test both of them. The prophecies spoke of choices and sacrifices, of moments that would shake the foundations of both realms. But looking down at his sleeping son, Kano felt no fear. Love, he had learned, was a power greater than any prophecy. As the moon rose over the mountain peaks, its light catching on Kano's scales and Kai's peaceful face, the python silently renewed his vow. He would prepare his son for whatever destiny awaited him, not just with knowledge and training, but with the unshakable foundation of unconditional love. In the quiet of the night, as the temple bells chimed softly in the distance, father and son rested together, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment, unaware of the extraordinary journey that lay ahead. The mountain winds carried whispers of change, of prophecies beginning to unfold, but within the sacred walls of the temple of the Jade Serpent, love continued to work its own quiet magic, transforming both the immortal guardian and his extraordinary child in ways that no ancient text could have predicted. As adolescence approached, Kai's world expanded beyond the temple walls in ways that tested both his abilities and the unique bond he shared with Kano. At 13, the boy had grown into a graceful young man, his movements carrying the fluid grace learned from his serpentine father. His golden eyes, now flecked with traces of amethyst like Kano's, held wisdom beyond his years, yet also sparked with the fire of youth's restless energy. One particular dawn marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Kai stood at the highest temple terrace, his breath visible in the crisp mountain air. Kano's massive form coiled around the terrace's edge, creating a protective barrier as they watched the sun paint the snow-capped peaks in brilliant hues of pink and gold. "The world is changing, my son," Kano spoke, his voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "I can feel it in the very stones of this temple. The time has come for your training to enter a new phase." The python's scales rippled with iridescent light as he moved, creating patterns that seemed to dance in the morning sun. That day marked the beginning of more advanced lessons. Kano began teaching Kai the sacred art of energy manipulation, a skill that required perfect harmony between physical and spiritual forces. The python would demonstrate by causing his scales to emit patterns of light that could influence the world around them, healing injured creatures, communing with nature spirits, and even affecting the weather in small ways. Kai proved to be an exceptionally gifted student. His unique heritage, being the child of two worlds, allowed him to grasp concepts that had taken others centuries to master. He learned to channel energy through his hands, creating lights that mimicked the glow of Kano's scales. The wooden amulet he wore seemed to amplify these abilities, often pulsing with warm light during their practice sessions. But with growing power came growing challenges. Kai began experiencing vivid dreams filled with symbols and voices from both the spiritual and physical realms. Some nights, he would wake up with his entire body glowing with ethereal light, the energy within him seeking expression. During these moments, Kano would wrap himself protectively around his son, using his own ancient energy to help Kai find balance. The temple monks watched this development with a mixture of awe and concern. They had long known about the prophecies surrounding the child of two worlds, but seeing these powers manifest was different from reading about them in ancient texts. Some of the younger monks began to whisper about Kai's growing abilities, their words carrying both reverence and fear. Sensing the need for his son to understand the full scope of his destiny, Kano decided to share more of the ancient knowledge he had guarded for centuries. One evening, as storm clouds gathered around the mountain peaks, he led Kai to a secret chamber beneath the temple's main hall. The chamber was unlike anything Kai had seen before. Its circular walls were covered in moving images that seemed to shift and change, telling stories of both past and potential futures. In the center stood a pool of water, so still it looked like liquid mirror, its surface occasionally rippling with unknown energies. "This is the Chamber of Convergence," Kano explained, his massive form gliding smoothly around the pool's edge. "It exists at a point where the physical and spiritual realms touch. Here, the barriers between worlds are thinnest, and truths can be seen more clearly." Kai approached the pool, drawn by its mysterious energy. As he gazed into its depths, the surface began to move, showing him visions of places and events he had never seen. He saw great cities where technology and spirituality had found harmony, and dark places where their conflict had led to chaos. He witnessed moments of profound connection between humans and spiritual beings, and instances where fear and misunderstanding had torn them apart. "The world stands at a crossroads," Kano continued, his amethyst eyes reflecting the pool's shifting light. "For too long, the physical and spiritual realms have been drifting apart. This separation has created imbalances that threaten both worlds. You, my son, carry within you the potential to bridge this divide." Kai watched as his own reflection in the pool began to change, showing him versions of himself at different ages in different situations. Some images filled him with hope, others with uncertainty. "But how can I bridge worlds when I'm still learning to control my own powers?" he asked, his voice carrying a trace of doubt. Kano's response was gentle but firm. "The greatest bridges are built one stone at a time. Your power grows each day, but more important than power is understanding. You have lived in both worlds since birth, raised by a spiritual guardian while maintaining your human nature. This unique perspective is your greatest strength." The python's scales began to glow with a soft light that filled the chamber. "Watch," he instructed, using his energy to create a complex pattern of light that danced across the water's surface. The pattern began to tell a story, the history of how the physical and spiritual realms had gradually grown apart. "Long ago," Kano explained, "humans and spirits lived in closer harmony. They understood that each realm brought balance to the other, physical beings providing the energy of growth and change, spiritual beings offering wisdom and connection to the universal forces. But fear, greed, and misunderstanding began to create barriers between them. The images shifted, showing the consequences of this separation: natural disasters, spiritual disturbances, and a growing sense of emptiness in both realms. "The prophecy speaks of one who can restore this balance," Kano continued, "not by forcing the realms together, but by helping them remember their natural harmony." Kai watched the visions with growing understanding. Each image, each story, seemed to resonate with something deep within him, as if awakening memories he didn't know he possessed. The wooden amulet around his neck grew warm, its ancient symbols glowing in response to the chamber's energy. "Your training until now has focused on controlling and understanding your abilities," Kano said, moving closer to his son. "But power, without purpose, is like a river without banks. It can become destructive rather than nurturing. Your true challenge will be learning how to use your gifts to heal the rifts between worlds." As if to emphasize this point, the pool's surface suddenly cleared, showing Kai's reflection as he was in that moment. But something was different. In the reflection, he could see the energy flowing through his body, connecting him to both the physical and spiritual realms. The sight filled him with a sense of purpose he had never felt before. "Remember," Kano's voice softened with paternal love, "you are not just a bridge between worlds. You are my son. Everything I have learned in my centuries of existence, every wisdom I have gained, is yours. Together we will prepare you for whatever challenges lie ahead." That night marked a turning point in Kai's training. The lessons that followed became more intensive, focusing not just on developing his powers, but on understanding the delicate balance between realms. Kano taught him to see beyond the surface of things, to understand the threads of energy that connected all beings. Days were spent in intense practice, learning to channel energy in increasingly complex ways, communicating with nature spirits, and studying the ancient texts that spoke of the time when worlds would need to be reunited. Nights were filled with meditation and discussion as Kano shared his centuries of wisdom with his eager student. But through it all, their bond as father and son remained at the heart of everything. Even as Kai's powers grew, even as the weight of prophecy rested more heavily on his young shoulders, the love between the giant white python and his human son only deepened. Their connection transcended the physical and spiritual divide, becoming its own kind of bridge between worlds. The temple monks who witnessed this continued to be amazed by the transformation of both guardian and child. They saw how Kano's ancient wisdom was renewed through his love for Kai, and how the boy's human compassion was enriched by his spiritual heritage. Together, they were writing a new chapter in the temple's long history, one that would echo through both realms for generations to come. As Kai's 15th year approached, the Temple of the Jade Serpent experienced a series of extraordinary events that would test both father and son in unexpected ways. The first signs came with the changing of seasons, when the mountain winds carried whispers of unrest from the world beyond their sanctuary. The temple's sacred crystals began pulsing with unusual patterns, and even the most experienced monks found their meditations disturbed by visions of impending change. One particularly significant morning, Kai woke to find the entire temple bathed in an ethereal light. His wooden amulet was glowing with unprecedented intensity, and the symbols carved into it seemed to float in the air around him. Kano, who had been keeping watch through the night, immediately recognized the significance of these signs. "The convergence is beginning," the python announced, his massive form moving with urgent grace through the temple halls. "The barriers between realms are thinning faster than anticipated. We must accelerate your training, my son." That day marked the beginning of Kai's most challenging lessons yet. Kano began teaching him ancient techniques that even the oldest temple texts barely mentioned. Together, they would spend hours in the Chamber of Convergence, where Kano taught Kai to manipulate the very fabric between worlds. "Focus," Kano would instruct, his coils creating protective circles around his son, as Kai learned to weave streams of physical and spiritual energy together. Feel the connection between realms. They are not separate, but rather two parts of the same whole, like the two sides of a leaf. The training was intense, often pushing Kai to his limits. There were moments when the energy would overwhelm him, causing bursts of power that shook the temple foundations. During these times, Kano's presence was crucial, his ancient energy helping to ground and stabilize his son's growing abilities. But it wasn't just power that Kano sought to teach. Each lesson was accompanied by wisdom, about the responsibility that came with such abilities. Power without compassion is like a storm without rain, he would say, destructive rather than nurturing. Your greatest strength lies not in what you can do, but in why you choose to do it. These lessons were put to the test. One stormy evening, when a group of travelers sought refuge at the temple, they were pilgrims from a distant valley, their clothes torn and faces haunted by whatever they had fled. The monks welcomed them, but Kai sensed something different about these visitors, an energy that seemed to flicker between physical and spiritual forms. Kano observed from the shadows as Kai approached the travelers. The python's amethyst eyes narrowed with both concern and pride as he watched his son interact with them. The visitors, it turned out, were not entirely human. They were beings, caught between realms, victims of the growing instability between worlds. "We were once fully human," their leader explained to Kai, her form occasionally shimming with ethereal light. "But as the barriers between worlds weakened, we found ourselves changing, neither fully physical nor fully spirit. We seek the Jade Serpent's wisdom, for the legends speak of his knowledge of both realms." Kai looked to Kano, who nodded solemnly. This was a real-world application of everything they had been practicing. Over the next few days, Kai worked with the travelers, using his unique abilities to help stabilize their fluctuating forms. Kano watched closely, offering guidance when needed, but allowing his son to find his own way to help. The process was challenging, requiring Kai to delicately manipulate the energies of both realms. There were moments of doubt and near failure, but with each attempt, his confidence grew. He learned to see the patterns of energy that held physical and spiritual forms together, and more importantly, he learned to mend them. One by one, the travelers were healed, their forms stabilizing as Kai helped them find balance between their physical and spiritual aspects. The gratitude in their eyes touched something deep within him, helping him understand the true purpose of his powers, not just to bridge worlds, but to heal the rifts that had caused suffering in both realms. After the travelers departed, Kano and Kai sat together on their favorite temple terrace, watching the stars emerge in the mountain sky. "You did well," Kano said, his voice filled with pride. "But what you achieved was more than just healing their forms. You showed them that balance between realms is possible, that harmony can be restored." Kai touched his wooden amulet thoughtfully. "I think I understand now," he said. "The prophecy isn't just about having power over both realms. It's about showing others how to find harmony within themselves, whether they're human, spirit, or something in between." Kano's scales shimmed with approval. "Yes, my son, and this is why your human heart is as important as your spiritual powers. Compassion, understanding, the ability to see beyond surface differences, these are the true tools of a bridge builder." However, their moment of peace was interrupted by an urgent message from the temple's highest peaks. The sentinel monks reported seeing strange lights in the distance, moving closer to the temple with each passing night. The energy patterns in the area were shifting rapidly, causing disruptions that even the most spiritually insensitive could feel. Kano and Kai spent the next few days preparing the temple for whatever approached. They strengthened the ancient protective barriers, taught the monks emergency procedures for dealing with spiritual disturbances, and spent long hours in the Chamber of Convergence, studying the patterns of change spreading across both realms. During one such session, Kai received a vision that left him shaking. He saw great tears appearing in the fabric between worlds, saw beings of both realms suffering as the natural order broke down. But most disturbing was the image of a choice he would have to make, a moment when the fate of both worlds would rest on a decision only he could make. "I saw it too," Kano said softly, wrapping his coils protectively around his son. "The prophecy speaks of such a moment, when the child of two worlds must choose a path that will affect all realms. But remember, my son, you will not face this choice alone. Everything we have learned together, every moment we have shared, has been preparing you for this." That night, as they rested in their chamber, Kai felt both the weight of his destiny and the strength of his father's love. The python's massive form curled around him as it had since he was an infant, but now it represented more than just protection. It was a reminder of the unconditional love that had shaped him, the wisdom that had guided him, and the unique bond that transcended the boundaries between worlds. As Kai drifted off to sleep, Kano remained vigilant, his amethyst eyes scanning the darkness beyond the temple walls. The python knew that greater challenges lay ahead, that his son would soon face tests that would shake both realms to their foundations. But in this moment, watching the peaceful sleep of the child he had raised, Kano felt a deep certainty that love, the force that had brought them together and shaped their extraordinary bond, would ultimately be stronger than any prophecy or power. The mountain winds whistled through the temple's ancient halls, carrying with them the promise of change and the whispers of destiny. But within the sacred walls of the temple of the Jade Serpent, a father's love continued to be the strongest magic of all, preparing a young man for the extraordinary role he would play in healing the divide between worlds. The arrival of Kai's 16th year brought changes that would reshape the very foundations of his world. The strange lights that had been approaching the temple finally revealed their true nature. They were luminous ones, ancient spirit beings, who served as guardians of the boundaries between realms. Their appearance at the temple of the Jade Serpent was unprecedented, marking a moment of profound significance. They materialized one dawn, their forms like living aurora borealis, shifting and flowing with colors that had no names in human language. The temple's sacred bells began ringing of their own accord as these celestial visitors descended upon the mountain sanctuary. Kano, sensing their arrival, had positioned himself protectively near Kai, his massive form gleaming in the ethereal light. The leader of the luminous ones, a being whose form suggested both wings and waves, addressed them in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The balance falters," it announced, its words carrying images directly into their minds. "The great divide between realms grows critical. We come seeking the child of two worlds." Kai stepped forward, his wooden amulet pulsing with responsive energy. The luminous ones surrounded him, their light interacting with his own innate power in ways that created spectacular displays of energy. But it was their next words that truly shook the foundation of everything Kai had known. "You must complete the final trials," they declared. "But to do so, you must leave the temple. There are 3 sacred sites where the barriers between worlds are thinnest. At each, you must face a challenge that will test not just your powers, but the very essence of who you are." Kano's amethyst eyes narrowed with concern. "These trials," he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "they were not meant to begin so soon. The prophecies speak of more time for preparation." The luminous ones shifted, their colors darkening slightly. Time is a luxury we no longer have. The rifts between worlds grow exponentially. Without intervention, both realms will suffer irreparable damage. They shared visions of what was already happening, places where the barrier had grown so thin that chaos reigned. Humans were being affected by spiritual energies they couldn't understand, while spiritual beings were becoming trapped in physical forms that couldn't contain their essence. The natural order of both realms was beginning to unravel. Kai felt the truth of their words resonating with his own growing awareness of the disturbances. His recent dreams had been filled with images of these disruptions, and his powers had been responding to distant calls for help, even in his sleep. Still, the prospect of leaving the temple, of being separated from Kano for the first time in his life, filled him with apprehension. The python seemed to sense his son's thoughts. If he must face these trials, Kano declared, his massive form rising to its full height, then I will accompany him. But the luminous ones shook their heads, their forms rippling with sympathetic understanding. The trials must be faced alone, they explained. It is part of the prophecy. The child of two worlds must learn to stand independently, to make choices without guidance, to find his own way of bridging the divide. That night, as Kai prepared for his journey, Kano shared wisdom that went beyond their usual lessons. "My son," the python spoke, his voice gentle yet urgent, "what lies ahead will test more than your powers. It will test your heart, your convictions, your understanding of both worlds." Kai sat within his father's protective coils, feeling like a child again, despite his growing powers. "I'm afraid," he admitted softly, "not of the trials themselves, but of failing those who need me, of letting you down." Kano's scales shimmered with emotion. "You could never let me down," he assured his son. "From the moment I found you, you have brought nothing but light and purpose to my existence. Trust in what we've built together, but also trust in yourself to find new ways when the old paths aren't enough." The python then did something unprecedented. He shed one of his scales, a perfect iridescent piece that seemed to hold its own inner light. "Take this," he said, as Kai carefully picked it up. "It contains a portion of my essence. While it cannot help you in your trials, it will let you know that you're never truly alone." As dawn approached, the luminous ones returned to guide Kai to his first trial. The entire temple gathered to bid him farewell, the monks chanting ancient blessings that made the very air vibrate with power. But the most poignant moment was between father and son. "Remember," Kano said, touching his forehead to Kai's in their familiar gesture of affection, "your greatest strength has always been your heart. Powers can be learned, but compassion, understanding, and love, these are gifts you've had since before I found you." Kai embraced his father's massive head, tears flowing freely. "I'll make you proud," he whispered. "You already have," Kano replied, his amethyst eyes glowing with love and pride. "You always have." As Kai prepared to depart with the luminous ones, the python shared one final piece of wisdom. The trials ahead will present themselves as tests of power, but look deeper. The true challenges often lie in understanding rather than ability, in choosing wisdom over force, in finding ways to unite rather than divide. The young man nodded, clutching both his wooden amulet and his father's scale. With a final look at the only home he'd ever known, at the father who had given him everything, Kai stepped into the light of the luminous ones. His form began to shimmer as they prepared to transport him to the first trial site. "Trust your heart," Kano's voice echoed in his mind as the light grew brighter, "for it bridges worlds in ways that power never can." In a flash of brilliant energy, Kai vanished with the luminous ones, leaving Kano and the temple behind. The Python remained still, his massive form silhouetted against the rising sun, watching the spot where his son had disappeared. Though his heart ached with the separation, it also swelled with pride and hope. The monks approached their ancient guardian, offering prayers and comfort, but Kano's thoughts were already racing ahead, following the path his son would take. He knew that while he couldn't be there physically, the love and wisdom they shared would continue to guide Kai through whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun rose fully over the mountain peaks, its light catching on Kano's scales in a display of natural beauty, the Python silently renewed his own commitment. He would maintain the temple's defenses, strengthen its barriers against the growing chaos, and prepare for whatever role he might yet play in the prophecy's fulfillment. The mountain winds carried the echo of distant challenges, of worlds in need of healing, of a destiny beginning to unfold. But they also carried the whispers of hope, of love that transcended realms, of a bond between father and son that would prove stronger than any force trying to tear the worlds apart. Kano lifted his gaze to the horizon, where the physical and spiritual realms seemed to merge in the morning light. He had raised his son for this moment, had prepared him with everything he could. Now, it was time to trust in that preparation, in Kai's strength, and in the power of the love they shared to guide him through whatever trials lay ahead. The prophecy was in motion. The trials had begun, and the fate of both realms hung in the balance. But in the heart of a giant white python, there was only faith in the extraordinary young man he had raised, and the unshakable belief that love would light the way through even the darkest challenges ahead. Kai's first trial brought him to the Valley of Mirrors, a place where reality itself seemed to bend and shift. The luminous ones deposited him in a vast canyon whose walls were made entirely of crystalline surfaces, each reflecting not just images, but possibilities, dreams, and alternate realities. The air itself seemed to shimmer with potential, making every breath feel like inhaling stardust. "Here lies your first challenge," the luminous ones announced, their forms beginning to fade. "Face what lies within the mirrors and find the truth beyond reflection." With these cryptic words, they vanished, leaving Kai alone in the mesmerizing valley. As he walked forward, each mirror showed him different versions of himself. In one, he saw himself as a powerful spiritual being, completely divorced from his human nature. In another, he was fully human, living a simple life far from any magical destiny. The reflections multiplied and shifted, each offering a different path, a different choice. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the valley, his own but older, filled with regret. "Why did you choose this burden?" the voice asked. "Look at all the lives you could have lived instead." The mirrors shifted again, showing him visions of simpler, easier existences, lives without the weight of prophecy, without the responsibility of bridging worlds. Kai clutched Kano's scale, feeling its warmth against his palm. His father's words came back to him, "Look deeper than what your eyes can see." Taking a deep breath, Kai closed his eyes, reaching out with his spiritual senses instead. The energy, patterns in the valley began to reveal themselves, showing him that the mirrors were more than just reflective surfaces. They were windows into the very nature of choice and consequence. As he opened his eyes again, the reflections changed. Now they showed him not just alternate versions of himself, but the ripple effects of each possible choice. He saw how the simple lives would have left both realms to continue drifting apart. He witnessed the consequences of choosing one realm over the other, the imbalances that would grow, the suffering that would spread. "I choose this path," Kai declared firmly, his voice resonating with power, "not because it is easy, but because it is right. Every choice has consequences that reach beyond ourselves." The mirrors suddenly began to sing, their crystalline surfaces vibrating with harmonic frequencies. The reflections merged and shifted, showing him a new vision, one of harmony between realms, of balance restored, of healing spreading through both worlds. But it also showed him the price of such harmony, the constant challenge of walking between worlds, of never fully belonging to either, of carrying the weight of both. "I accept this price," Kai stated, his voice strong and clear. "My father taught me that true strength lies not in avoiding challenges, but in facing them with understanding and purpose." The valley responded to his words. The mirrors began to glow with increasing intensity, their light converging on Kai. He felt their energy flowing into him, not as raw power, but as deeper understanding. The ability to see beyond surface reflections, to perceive the interconnected nature of all choices, became permanently etched into his consciousness. As the light faded, a single mirror remained before him, showing his true reflection, not an idealized version or a simpler alternative, but who he really was. A young man standing at the crossroads of worlds, choosing to embrace his destiny with full awareness of its costs. The luminous ones reappeared, their forms glowing with approval. "You have passed the first trial," they announced, "not by choosing the most powerful path, but by understanding why you choose it. This wisdom will serve you in the trials to come." Before they could transport him to the next location, Kai asked them to wait. He approached the remaining mirror, placing his hand against its surface. "Thank you," he said softly, "for showing me that the hardest path can also be the right one." The mirror shimmered one last time, showing him a brief glimpse of Kano at the temple. The python's amethyst eyes filled with pride, as if somehow knowing his son had passed his first test. The image filled Kai with renewed determination for the challenges ahead. As the luminous ones prepared to transport him to the second trial site, Kai held both his wooden amulet and his father's scale close to his heart. The Valley of Mirrors had taught him that while we may be shown many possible paths, the truest one is often the one that serves more than just ourselves. The light of transportation began to envelop him, but this time Kai felt no fear. He had faced his first trial not with raw power, but with wisdom and understanding, just as Kano had taught him. As his form began to fade from the valley, his voice echoed with quiet confidence. "I am ready for what comes next." The crystalline walls of the valley sang one final harmonic note, a blessing and a reminder that the greatest choices are those made not for ourselves alone, but for the good of all. As Kai vanished into the light, the Valley of Mirrors returned to its eternal vigil, waiting for the next seeker of truth to face their own reflections. The next destination materialized around him, the Cavern of Echoes, where the second trial awaited. Unlike the brilliant clarity of the Valley of Mirrors, this place was shrouded in shadows and whispers. The vast underground chamber seemed to breathe with ancient power, its walls covered in phosphorescent symbols that pulsed like heartbeats. Here, the luminous ones announced, their light providing brief illumination. You must learn to listen to the voices that lie between worlds. What seems like chaos may hold patterns. What appears as noise may carry wisdom. They faded once more, leaving Kai in the dimly lit cavern. Almost immediately, the whispers began. They came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in languages, both known and unknown. Some were prayers from the human realm, others were songs from the spirit world, and still others were the voices of beings caught between realms. The cacophony was overwhelming, each voice demanding attention, each story crying out to be heard. Kai's first instinct was to try to block them out, to shield himself from the overwhelming flood of sound. But then he felt the warmth of his father's scale against his chest, and remembered Kano's teachings about the importance of listening not just with ears, but with heart. Slowly, deliberately, Kai sat in the center of the cavern. Instead of fighting against the voices, he began to breathe in rhythm with the pulsing symbols on the walls. As he did so, something remarkable happened. The chaos of sound began to organize itself, like instruments in an orchestra finding their proper places. He could now distinguish individual voices, understand their stories. A child in the physical realm praying for her sick mother, a nature spirit mourning the destruction of its forest home, a being caught between worlds, calling for help to find its way back. Each voice carried not just words, but emotions, hopes, fears, and dreams. Every voice matters, Kai whispered, understanding dawning in his heart. Every story is part of the greater whole. As this realization settled in him, the cavern's acoustics changed. The whispers began to harmonize, creating a symphony of interconnected lives and destinies. Kai found himself at the center of this grand orchestration, not as a conductor trying to control it, but as a listener, learning to understand its natural patterns and rhythms. The phosphorescent symbols on the walls brightened in response to this harmony, revealing ancient writings that spoke of the importance of balance, of listening before acting, of understanding before attempting to help. Kai realized that this was the true purpose of the trial, not to master the voices, but to learn how to hear them all, to understand how they fit together in the greater symphony of existence. Standing slowly, Kai began to move through the cavern, each step in rhythm with the harmonized voices. As he moved, he used his powers not to silence or control the sounds, but to help them find their natural place in the greater chorus. Where there was discord, he sought to understand its source, rather than simply trying to force harmony. The cavern responded to his approach. The phosphorescent symbols began to dance across the walls, creating patterns that matched the harmonic convergence of voices. Kai found himself becoming part of this grand symphony, his own energy adding to the complex tapestry of sound and light. A bridge between worlds, he realized aloud, must first understand the voices of both sides. It's not about controlling the chaos, but about finding the patterns within it, helping each voice find its place in the greater harmony. As these words left his lips, the cavern erupted in a crescendo of sound and light. The harmonized voices rose in a powerful chorus that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. But instead of being overwhelming, it was beautiful, a perfect blend of countless individual voices coming together in natural harmony. The luminous ones reappeared, their light adding new dimensions to the cavern's illumination. "You have understood," they said, their own voices becoming part of the harmony. "The second trial is complete. You have learned that bridging worlds requires more than power. It requires the wisdom to listen, to understand, and to help others find their place in the greater symphony of existence. Kai nodded, still moving in rhythm with the cavern's harmonies. Each voice has its place, he said softly, just as each being has its role in both realms. True harmony comes not from forcing change, but from helping each voice find its natural place in the greater whole. As the luminous ones prepared to transport him to his final trial, Kai took one last moment to listen to the symphony he had helped create. In it, he could hear echoes of everything Kano had taught him about patience, understanding, and the importance of listening with both heart and mind. The light of transportation began to envelop him once more, but this time the voices of the cavern seemed to follow him, their harmony a reminder that every being, whether physical or spiritual, is part of a greater whole. As his form began to fade, Kai carried with him not just the lesson of listening, but the deeper understanding that true harmony comes from helping each voice find its own way to contribute to the universal symphony. The Cavern of Echoes continued, its eternal song, but now with a new pattern woven into its ancient harmonies, the pattern of a young man who had learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his heart, who had understood that bridging worlds begins with hearing all voices as part of one greater song. The final trial site materialized around Kai in a swirl of ethereal light, the crossroads of destiny, a place that existed simultaneously in both realms. Here, reality itself seemed fluid, with physical and spiritual aspects bleeding into each other like watercolors on silk. The ground beneath his feet shifted between solid earth and pure energy, while the sky above alternated between starlit darkness and brilliant auroras. In the center of this ever-changing landscape stood an ancient tree, its roots visibly extending into both realms. One half of the tree existed in the physical world, with bark, leaves, and branches that followed natural laws. The other half existed in the spirit realm, composed of pure energy and light that flowed like living mercury. At the point where these two halves met, a profound power pulsed like a heartbeat. "Your final trial begins," the luminous ones announced, their forms already beginning to fade. "Here, at the crossroads, you must make a choice that will affect both realms. But be warned, the obvious choice is not always the right one." As their light dimmed, a new presence made itself known. From the shadows emerged a figure that caused Kai's heart to race. It was Kano, his massive white form gleaming with familiar power. But something was wrong. The python's movements were awkward, his amethyst eyes dulled. "Father?" Kai called, outstepping forward. But another voice stopped him, also Kano's, coming from the opposite direction. There stood another white python, identical to the first, its scales shimmering with the same ethereal light Kai remembered. "My son," both pythons spoke simultaneously. "Only one of us is real. The other is an illusion created by the chaos between realms. Choose wrongly and both worlds will suffer." Kai's mind raced. He reached for his father's scale and his wooden amulet, but neither reacted to the presence of either python. This was not a test that could be solved with magical items or powers. As he looked between the two identical forms of his father, he remembered Kano's teachings about looking beyond the surface. The first python began to speak, recounting memories of Kai's childhood, of lessons learned and love shared. Its words were perfect, its knowledge complete. The second python remained, silent, watching with those familiar amethyst eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. As Kai studied them both, the tree at the crossroads began to pulse more intensely. Its dual nature, half physical, half spiritual, reminded him of his own unique position between worlds. Just as the tree found balance between realms, so must he find balance in this choice. "Tell me," Kai finally spoke, addressing both pythons, "what is the most important lesson you taught me?" The first python responded immediately with wisdom about power and responsibility, about the importance of maintaining balance between worlds. Its answer was flawless, drawn from countless lessons over the years. The second python simply moved forward, its movements fluid and graceful, and touched its forehead to Kai's, the gesture of love and trust they had shared since his childhood. No words, just presence. In that moment, Kai understood. "You're both real," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. "Just as I am both physical and spiritual, you exist in both realms. This trial isn't about choosing between truth and illusion. It's about understanding that sometimes the hardest choice is recognizing that there isn't a choice to be made at all." The crossroads responded to his words, the trees pulsing. Light grew stronger, and the two pythons began to merge, their forms flowing together like streams joining into a river. Where they met, Kai saw the truth. His father existed in both realms, just as he did, each aspect equally real and equally important. Understanding dawns. A new voice spoke, the voice of the crossroads itself, speaking through the merged form of Kano. The final trial was never about choosing between worlds, but about understanding that they are inseparable. Just as you are not half human and half spirit, but wholly both, so too are the realms, not truly separate, but parts of a greater whole. The merged form of Kano began to glow with unprecedented power. "You have completed all 3 trials, my son. Not by choosing one path over another, but by understanding that true balance comes from embracing the wholeness of all things." The light grew blinding, and Kai felt himself being transported one final time. When his vision cleared, he found himself back at the temple of the Jade Serpent, but it had changed. The barriers between physical and spiritual that had always existed there had become permeable, allowing both realms to coexist in harmony. Kano, the real Kano, waited for him at the temple gates, his massive form radiating pride and love. "You've returned," the python said softly, touching his forehead to Kai's in their familiar gesture. "I understand now," Kai replied, embracing his father's massive head. "The prophecy wasn't about me becoming a bridge between worlds. It was about helping others see that the bridge has always existed within themselves." The luminous ones appeared one final time, their light merging with the new harmony of the temple. "The trials are complete," they announced, "but your true work is just beginning. Will you help others find the balance you have discovered?" Kai looked at Kano, seeing in his father's eyes the same wisdom that had guided him since childhood. "Together," he answered, knowing that while he had passed the trials alone, he would never truly be alone in the work ahead. The python's scales shimmered with approval and love. "Together," Kano agreed, his massive form coiling protectively around his son as it had done since the day he found him. As dawn broke over the mountain peaks, the temple of the Jade Serpent glowed with new purpose. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not through power or choice, but through understanding and love. Kai and Kano stood together at the threshold of a new era, ready to help others discover the harmony that exists not between worlds, but within the greater whole of existence itself. The mountain winds carried their story to distant lands, speaking of a giant white python who raised an abandoned child, and of how that child grew to understand that the greatest bridges are built not between worlds, but within hearts that learn to embrace all aspects of existence. Their tale became a testament to the power of love to transcend all boundaries, and of wisdom that comes from understanding that sometimes the hardest choice is recognizing that true harmony requires no choice at all. And so, the temple of the Jade Serpent entered a new chapter in its ancient history, with father and son working together to help others find the balance they had discovered. Their bond, forged in love and strengthened through trials, became a living example of the harmony possible when we embrace the wholeness of all things. In the months following Kai's triumphant return from the trials, the Temple of the Jade Serpent flourished as a beacon of harmony between realms. However, this period of peace was shattered one stormy night, when an unprecedented surge of dark energy rippled through both worlds. The temple's sacred crystals cracked, their light dimming as an ancient seal hidden deep beneath the mountain began to break. Kai and Kano rushed to the underground chamber where the disturbance originated. The walls were covered in archaic symbols that neither had seen before, pulsing with an ominous red light. As they watched, a figure emerged from the shadows, a being that existed as both spirit and nightmare, its form constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. At last, the entity spoke, its voice resonating on multiple planes of existence. The child of two worlds has made the barriers weak enough for my return. The creature introduced itself as Void Walker, an ancient being that had been sealed away eons ago for attempting to collapse all realms into a singular chaos. Your precious harmony, it sneered, has weakened the very barriers that kept me imprisoned. Balance between worlds, I offer something far more efficient, the end of all separation, all boundaries, all distinction, pure chaos, pure freedom. The entity's power began to spread through the temple grounds, causing reality itself to warp and twist. Where its influence touched, the careful harmony between physical and spiritual realms began to dissolve into chaotic fusion. Monks found themselves phasing between states of being, and the temple's ancient artifacts started to decay into raw energy. Kano moved protectively in front of Kai, his massive form glowing with defensive power. "This is not true harmony," the python declared, "but destruction masked as unity. The boundaries between realms exist for a reason, not to separate, but to define and protect the unique aspects of each world." Voidwalker laughed, the sound causing ripples of distortion in the air. "And who are you to decide what should be separate and what should be one? Your harmony is just another form of control. I offer true freedom, the freedom of chaos." Kai stepped forward, standing beside his father. The wisdom gained from his trials crystallized into new understanding. As he faced this threat, "You're wrong," he stated firmly. "True freedom comes not from destroying boundaries, but from understanding why they exist and choosing to respect them while building bridges of understanding." The entity attacked, launching tendrils of chaotic energy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of reality around them. Kai and Kano moved in perfect synchronization, their combined powers creating a shield of balanced energy, physical and spiritual forces working in harmony rather than collapse. As they fought through the temple's halls, Kai realized that This battle was different from his trials. It wasn't about choosing between realms or even understanding their connection. It was about protecting the very nature of existence itself. Each realm needed its own space to thrive, its own rules and patterns, while still remaining connected through understanding and respect. The battle raged across multiple planes of existence, with Voidwalker attempting to corrupt the harmony Kai and Kano had worked so hard to build. But with each attack, their defense grew stronger, fueled not just by power, but by the deep understanding that true unity doesn't require the destruction of individual identity. Kano's scales began to glow with unprecedented brightness, each one reflecting the perfect balance between physical and spiritual energy. "Remember, my son," he called to Kai as they faced another wave of chaos. "Strength lies not in forcing things together or keeping them apart, but in understanding their natural relationship." Drawing upon everything he had learned, Kai began to see the pattern within Voidwalker's chaos. The entity wasn't truly seeking freedom. It was running from the responsibility of existence itself, trying to collapse everything into meaningless entropy rather than face the beautiful complexity of life in all its forms. In a moment of clarity, Kai understood what needed to be done. Instead of fighting against Voidwalker's chaos, he began to work with it, helping to channel and direct it in ways that revealed its own underlying patterns. Even chaos, he realized, had its place in the greater harmony of existence. "You see only the boundaries between things," Kai addressed the entity, his voice carrying the weight of true understanding, "but miss the beauty of how these boundaries create meaning. Without them, there is no dance, no music, no love, just uniform nothingness." Kano added his own wisdom to Kai's words, his ancient knowledge complementing his son's insight. "The greatest freedom," the Python declared, "comes not from destroying all borders, but from learning to dance between them with respect and understanding." Together, father and son began to weave a new kind of harmony, one that didn't deny the existence of chaos, but helped it find its proper place in the greater symphony of existence. Their combined power created patterns of light and energy that showed how even the most chaotic forces could contribute to the beauty of the whole without destroying it. Voidwalker struggled against this new approach, but found itself being transformed rather than defeated. The entity's chaotic energy began to stabilize, not into rigid order, but into a dynamic balance that allowed for both structure and freedom. What is happening to me?" the entity asked, its voice losing its harsh edge. "You're finding your place in the greater harmony," Kai explained gently. "Not as a destroyer of boundaries, but as a force that helps us understand why boundaries matter and how to work with them wisely." The transformation was spectacular to behold. Voidwalker's form shifted from destructive chaos into something new, a being that embodied the dynamic tension between order and chaos, structure and freedom. The entity became a guardian of change rather than a force of destruction. As the battle concluded, the temple of the Jade Serpent had been transformed. The experience had added a new dimension to its harmony, an understanding that true balance includes not just the peaceful connection between realms, but also the dynamic forces that challenge and strengthen these connections. Kano looked at his son with pride, seeing how Kai had grown beyond even the prophecy's expectations. "You continue to surprise me," the Python said warmly. "You've shown that being a bridge between worlds means more than just connecting them. It means understanding and working with all the forces that influence them. Kai touched his father's scales gratefully. "I learned from the best," he replied. "You taught me that love and wisdom can transform any force, even chaos itself, into something that contributes to the greater harmony of existence." The temple monks, who had witnessed the entire battle, began to record this new teaching, that true harmony embraces all aspects of existence, finding ways to work with even the most challenging forces rather than simply opposing them. The story of how the child of two worlds and the giant white python transformed an ancient force of chaos became a powerful lesson in the deeper meaning of balance and unity. As dawn broke over the mountain peaks, the temple of the Jade Serpent glowed with a new kind of light, one that spoke not just of peace between realms, but of the dynamic harmony that comes from understanding and working with all the forces that shape existence. Kai and Kano stood together, their bond stronger than ever, ready to continue their work of helping others find their own way to contribute to the grand symphony of life. The transformation of Voidwalker brought unexpected changes to the temple of the Jade Serpent. The entity, now a guardian of dynamic balance, had integrated itself into the temple's sacred energies, creating new possibilities that neither Kai nor Kano had anticipated. One morning, as father and son meditated in their favorite courtyard, they noticed something extraordinary. The temple was beginning to attract visitors from both realms, who sought not just harmony, but transformation. Among these seekers was a young spirit warrior named Luna, whose ethereal form flickered with uncertainty. Unlike most spirits, she had chosen to maintain a connection to her human origins, making her an outcast among her kind. When she arrived at the temple, her energy was unstable, threatening to collapse into either pure spirit or return fully to human form. "I heard what you did with Voidwalker," Luna addressed Kai, her voice carrying echoes of both realms. "They say you understand how to embrace opposing forces without letting them tear you apart. Please help me find my balance." Kano observed the interaction with interest, his amethyst eyes noting the similarities between Luna's struggle and the larger challenges they had faced. The python's scales shimmered with anticipation as he watched his son approach this new kind of challenge. Drawing upon his experiences, Kai realized that Luna's situation offered an opportunity to apply their lessons in a more personal way. "Your dual nature isn't a flaw to be fixed," he explained, "but a gift to be understood. Like the temple itself, you can learn to exist in both states simultaneously." Working with Luna became a new kind of trial for Kai. Instead of grand battles or cosmic choices, this challenge required subtle understanding and patient guidance. He taught her the lessons he had learned about embracing all aspects of oneself, demonstrating how the tension between different natures could become a source of strength rather than conflict. Kano contributed his own wisdom to Luna's training, sharing insights from centuries of observing the interplay between realms. The python's presence brought a sense of ancient knowledge to complement Kai's more personal understanding of bridging worlds. As Luna learned to stabilize her dual nature, other unique seekers began to arrive at the temple. Some were humans who had accidentally awakened spiritual abilities. Others were spirits struggling to understand their connection to the physical world. Each brought their own challenges, their own need for balance and understanding. The temple evolved to accommodate these new students. The harmonious energy that Kai and Kano had established began to take on new dimensions, creating spaces where Beings of all types could safely explore their nature without fear of losing themselves. One particularly memorable case involved a group of mountain villagers who had been caught in a spiritual avalanche, leaving them partially phased between realms. Their arrival tested not just Kai's abilities, but also his understanding of how to help others find their own path to balance. Working with Void Walker's transformed energy, Kai and Kano developed new techniques for helping beings navigate the space between realms. They discovered that the key wasn't in forcing a choice between states, but in teaching others to find stability in their unique form of existence. The Python's role evolved as well. Kano found himself becoming not just a guardian and father, but a living example of how ancient wisdom could adapt to new challenges. His massive form became a constant reminder that strength comes in many forms, and that true power lies in understanding rather than domination. Together, they established what became known as the School of Harmonic Integration, where beings from all realms could learn to navigate their unique paths while contributing to the greater harmony of existence. The temple's ancient halls rang, with new voices, new energies, and new possibilities. One day, as they watched their students practicing in the courtyard, Kano turned to Kai with pride in his amethyst eyes. "You've taken the lessons of harmony far beyond what I could have imagined," the Python said softly. "You're not just bridging worlds anymore. You're helping others create their own bridges." Kai smiled, touching the wooden amulet that still hung around his neck. "I had a good teacher," he replied. "You showed me that love is the strongest bridge of all. Everything else builds from that foundation." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by the arrival of a new seeker, a being whose form shifted between human, animal, and pure energy. The challenge they represented was unlike anything they had faced before, but now, with their combined wisdom and experience, Kai and Kano were ready. As they moved to welcome the new arrival, the temple's crystals pulsed with anticipation. The story of the giant white python and his human son had evolved into something greater, a living testament to the power of love, understanding, and acceptance to transform not just individuals, but the very nature of existence itself. The mountain winds carried their teaching to distant lands, speaking of a place where all beings could learn to embrace their true nature while contributing to the greater harmony of existence. The temple of the Jade Serpent had become more than a sanctuary. It was now a beacon of hope for all who sought to understand their place in the grand tapestry of reality. And so, Kai and Kano continued their work, each day bringing new challenges and new opportunities to share the wisdom they had gained. Their bond, forged in love and strengthened through trials, became an example of how the deepest truths often come not from grand prophecies or cosmic battles, but from the simple choice to love, understand, and accept both ourselves and others, exactly as we are. The transformed Void Walker's energy continued to flow through the temple, a constant reminder that even the most challenging forces could be integrated into a greater harmony. The entity's presence helped students understand that balance wasn't about eliminating differences, but about finding ways to let all aspects of existence contribute to the whole. As the sun set behind the mountain peaks, casting long shadows across the temple grounds, Kai and Kano watched their students practice their various forms of integration. Each being present represented a unique combination of energies, a singular expression of existence's infinite possibilities. "We've come a long way from that stormy night when you found me," Kai mused, leaning against his father's massive form. Kano's scales shimmed with warmth and love. "And yet," the python replied, "in the most important ways nothing has changed. Love still guides us, wisdom still grows, and the greatest adventures still lie ahead." Together, they faced the future, ready to help each new seeker find their own path to harmony, their own way of contributing to the ever-evolving symphony of existence. The prophecy that had brought them together had been fulfilled in ways no one could have predicted, proving that the greatest magic of all lies not in power or prophecy, but in the simple choice to love, understand, and grow together. As the School of Harmonic Integration flourished, a new challenge emerged that would test the very foundations of everything Kai and Kano had built. The first sign came during a routine meditation session, when the temple's crystals began pulsing with an unfamiliar frequency. Voidwalker, now integrated into the temple's energies, detected something unprecedented. A tear in the fabric of reality itself, far beyond the normal boundaries between realms. This wasn't just a mixing of physical and spiritual planes, but a fundamental fracture in the structure of existence. Through this tear, something ancient and forgotten was awakening, the primordial dream, a consciousness that existed before the separation of realms, before the establishment of order and chaos, before even the concept of distinction itself. Unlike Voidwalker's chaos, which sought to destroy boundaries, the primordial dream represented a state of pure potential, where all possibilities existed simultaneously. Its stirring threatened not just the balance between realms, but the very concept of separate realms altogether. "This is beyond anything we've faced," Kano observed, his massive form coiled protectively around the temple's central chamber. "The primordial dream predates even my earliest memories. Its awakening could unmake everything we know, not through destruction, but through infinite possibility." Kai could feel the truth in his father's words. The energy emanating from the tear was neither hostile nor benevolent. It simply was, in a way that defied all normal understanding. Students at the school began experiencing strange phenomena, their forms shifting through infinite variations, their thoughts expanding beyond the constraints of ordinary consciousness. Luna, who had mastered her dual nature, found herself experiencing thousands of potential lives simultaneously. The transformed Voidwalker resonated with the ancient energy, its carefully balanced nature threatening to dissolve back into pure potential. Understanding that traditional methods of maintaining harmony wouldn't work against something that preceded the very concept of harmony, Kai and Kano had to develop a completely new approach. They couldn't fight the primordial dream, nor could they simply try to contain it. They needed to find a way to integrate this fundamental force into the existing structure of reality without letting it dissolve everything they had built. "Perhaps," Kai suggested, drawing upon everything he had learned, "we're thinking about this wrong. Instead of seeing the primordial dream as a threat to order, what if it's an opportunity to understand the deepest nature of existence itself?" Kano's amethyst eyes glowed with understanding. "Yes," the python agreed, his scales shimmering with new insight. "Just as we learned to work with chaos rather than against it, perhaps we can learn to work with pure potential itself." Together, they began to explore the nature of the primordial dream, not as something to be controlled or contained, but as something to be understood and integrated. They discovered that while it represented infinite possibility, it also contained within itself the seeds of all pattern and structure. Working with their students, they developed new techniques for navigating the realm of pure potential while maintaining individual identity, Luna's experience with dual nature proved invaluable, as she helped others understand how to exist in multiple states without losing their core essence. The transformed Void Walker contributed its understanding of how chaos and order could coexist, helping to create frameworks for handling infinite possibility without dissolving into formlessness. The entity's own experience of transformation became a model for how fundamental forces could be integrated into existing structures. As they worked, something remarkable began to happen. Instead of threatening their reality, the primordial dream's energy began to enhance it. The school of harmonic integration evolved into something even more profound, a place where beings could explore the infinite possibilities within themselves while maintaining their chosen form and purpose. Students learned to tap into the primordial dream's potential without losing themselves in it. They discovered that true stability doesn't come from rigid structure, but from understanding how to remain centered while exploring infinite possibility. Kai and Kano's bond grew even deeper through this challenge. Their relationship became a living example of how love could provide an anchor in the face of infinite possibility, a fixed point of certainty in an ocean of potential. The temple itself transformed, its ancient stones now humming with the energy of pure potential, tempered by conscious choice. The sacred spaces became places where beings could safely explore the deepest nature of existence while maintaining their individual journeys. As they mastered this new understanding, Kai realized that this challenge had brought them full circle. Just as he had once learned to bridge physical and spiritual realms, now he was helping others bridge the gap between finite form and infinite potential. The story of the giant white python and his human son continued to evolve, becoming a testament not just to the power of love and understanding, but to the endless potential for growth and transformation that exists within all beings. And so, the Temple of the Jade Serpent entered yet another phase of its existence, becoming a place where the most fundamental forces of reality could be explored, understood, and integrated into the grand symphony of existence. Kai and Kano stood together at the threshold of infinite possibility, their bond stronger than ever, ready to help others navigate the endless potential of being while maintaining the beautiful uniqueness of their individual journeys. The mountain. Winds carried whispers of their latest triumph, speaking of how love and wisdom could provide stability even in the face of infinite possibility. Their story became a beacon of hope for all who sought to understand their place in the vast tapestry of existence, reminding everyone that the greatest adventure lies not in choosing between possibilities, but in learning to dance with them all while remaining true to oneself. As the sun set behind the mountain peaks, casting its golden light across the transformed temple grounds, Kai and Kano watched their students exploring their new understanding. Each being present represented not just a unique combination of energies, but a conscious choice made amid infinite possibility, a testament to the power of love, wisdom, and understanding to create meaning even in the face of boundless potential. Who would have thought, Kai mused, that the abandoned baby you found would lead us here? Kano's scales gleamed with pride and love. The greatest journeys, the python replied, often begin with the simplest choices, like the choice to love, to protect, to understand. Everything else flows from there. Together, they faced the future, ready to help each new seeker find their way through the infinite possibilities of existence while maintaining their unique essence. The prophecy that had brought them together had blossomed into something far greater than anyone could have imagined, proving that the most powerful magic of all lies not in controlling reality, but in learning to dance with its endless potential while remaining anchored in love. As the integration of the primordial dream stabilized, bringing a new dimension of understanding to the temple of the Jade Serpent, an unexpected visitor arrived. A being known as the Time Weaver materialized in the temple's central courtyard, its form a complex tapestry of moments woven together. Unlike other spiritual entities they had encountered, the Time Weaver existed simultaneously across all temporal planes, perceiving past, present, and future as one continuous fabric. The ripples of your work have reached across time itself, the Time Weaver announced, its voice echoing through multiple moments at once. What you have built here, this harmony between realms, this integration of infinite possibility, has created patterns that resonate throughout all of existence, but with this achievement comes a greater responsibility. The Time Weaver revealed that the temple's success in harmonizing different aspects of reality had attracted the attention of the Kronos Council, an ancient group of beings who maintained the stability of time itself. They had observed how Kai and Kano's work had begun to influence not just the present, but the past and future as well. This new development presented both opportunity and challenge. The temporal ripples emanating from their work were creating new possibilities across all timelines, helping beings in different eras find their own paths to harmony. However, these changes were also causing unexpected interactions between different temporal planes. Kano's massive form shifted thoughtfully as he absorbed this information. We have focused on bridging realms and integrating possibilities, the Python observed, but perhaps we have overlooked the temporal dimension of our work. Kai touched his wooden amulet, feeling it resonate with new frequencies. Each choice we make, each person we help, he realized, doesn't just affect the present moment, but echoes across time itself. The Time Weaver nodded, its form shimmering with temporal energies. Your understanding grows. The school of harmonic integration must now expand to include temporal harmony, teaching beings not just to balance different aspects of reality, but to understand their place in the greater flow of time. This new challenge required Kai and Kano to develop entirely new approaches to their work. They began to perceive how their teachings affected different temporal planes, how the harmony they created rippled both backward and forward through time. Luna, whose mastery of dual nature had already helped many, discovered she could now perceive the temporal echoes of her choices. She began helping others understand how their present actions created patterns that influenced both past and future. The transformed Void Walker, with its understanding of chaos and order, contributed insights into how temporal flows could be harmonized without disrupting the essential patterns of existence. Its presence helped stabilize the temporal energies. Now flowing through the temple, working with the Time Weaver, they established new areas of study within the school. Students learned to perceive their temporal resonance, how their choices and actions created patterns that extended beyond the present moment. They discovered that true harmony required understanding not just the balance between different aspects of reality, but also the flow of time itself. Kai found himself growing in ways he hadn't imagined possible. His ability to bridge worlds expanded to include temporal bridges, helping beings understand their connection to past and future selves. The wisdom Kano had shared with him since childhood took on new meaning as he perceived how it had been shaped by temporal flows. The Python's ancient knowledge proved invaluable in this new phase of their journey. Kano's centuries of existence gave him unique insight into temporal patterns, helping him guide others in understanding their place in time's greater tapestry. One particularly powerful moment came when a group of students from different temporal planes manifested simultaneously in the temple courtyard. Rather than causing chaos, this convergence created a beautiful harmony, each being contributing their unique temporal perspective to a greater understanding of existence. The Time Weaver observed their work with approval, noting how the temple had evolved into a nexus point where different times, realms, and possibilities could safely interact and learn from each other. The patterns they were creating were helping to stabilize the very fabric of time itself. As their understanding grew, Kai and Kano realized that their bond transcended not just realms and possibilities, but time itself. The love between them had created patterns that resonated across all temporal planes, serving as an anchor for others seeking to understand their own temporal nature. The temple's crystals began to pulse with new frequencies, reflecting the temporal harmonies now flowing through its ancient stones. The sacred spaces became points where beings could safely explore their connection to different temporal planes while maintaining their present awareness. Students learned that just as they could hold multiple possibilities within themselves, they could also maintain awareness of their temporal connections without losing their present focus. The ability to perceive temporal patterns became another tool for understanding their place in the greater harmony of existence. The transformed void, Walker's energy evolved further, incorporating temporal awareness into its nature. Its presence helped others understand how chaos and order played out across time, creating patterns that contributed to the greater stability of existence. Luna's work with dual-natured beings expanded to include helping them understand their temporal aspects. She discovered that beings struggling with multiple natures often carried temporal imbalances that needed to be harmonized. The school of harmonic integration became known across all temporal planes as a place where beings could learn to understand and work with the full spectrum of their existence, across realms, possibilities, and time itself. The wisdom Kai and Kano shared helped others find their own paths through the complex tapestry of reality. The Time Weaver remained a frequent visitor, offering guidance and insight as they explored this new dimension of their work. Its presence reminded them that every moment of harmony they created contributed to the greater stability of all existence. As they worked with temporal energies, Kai and Kano discovered that their own story had created patterns that reached far beyond their original understanding. The tale of a giant white python raising an abandoned child had become a temporal touchstone, inspiring beings across different times to find their own paths to harmony. The mountain winds now carried their story not just across space, but across time, speaking to beings in all eras about the power of love, understanding, and wisdom to transform reality itself. Their work had evolved from bridging worlds to helping maintain the very fabric of existence, looking out over the temple grounds, where beings from different realms, possibilities, and times now studied together in harmony. Kai felt a deep sense of purpose. The prophecy that had brought him and Kano together had grown into something far greater, a living testament to the endless potential for growth, understanding, and love that existed within all beings, across all times. Every ending, Kano observed, his scales shimmering with temporal energies, is just another beginning seen from a different perspective. Kai nodded, understanding that their journey would continue to evolve, creating new patterns of harmony that would resonate across all dimensions of existence. The love between them remained the constant anchor in an ever-expanding sea of possibility and time. And so the Temple of the Jade Serpent continued its evolution, becoming a nexus point where all aspects of reality could meet, learn, and grow together. The story of the giant white python and his human son became a temporal constant, reminding beings in all times and places that the greatest power lies not in controlling reality, but in understanding and working with all its magnificent complexity. In the culmination of their extraordinary journey, Kai and Kano faced their greatest revelation yet. The Time Weaver returned one final time, bringing with it a truth that would transform their understanding of everything they had accomplished. "The story you have lived," the Time Weaver announced, its form shimmering with temporal energies, "is more than just your own. It is the origin story, the first tale of harmony that created the possibility of balance in all realms, across all times." The being revealed that their journey, from the moment Kano found baby Kai to their mastery of temporal harmonies, was the original pattern that had made all other forms of harmony possible. Their bond had created the very template for how different aspects of reality could coexist and flourish together. This revelation came with a profound responsibility. The Time Weaver explained that to complete the circle of creation, they needed to share their understanding not just with their students, but with the very fabric of reality itself. This final act would ensure that the possibility of harmony would always exist in all times and places. But be warned, the Time Weaver cautioned, this sharing requires complete vulnerability. You must open yourselves fully to all of existence, holding nothing back. The risk is as great as the potential reward. Kano's massive form coiled protectively around Kai, his amethyst eyes meeting his son's gaze. "Whatever we face," the python declared, "we face together, as we always have." Drawing upon everything they had learned, Kai and Kano began the process of sharing their story with existence itself. The temple's crystals resonated with unprecedented power as they opened themselves completely, allowing their experiences, understanding, and most importantly, their love, to flow into the very structure of reality. The transformed Voidwalker, Luna, and all their students gathered to witness this extraordinary moment. As Kai and Kano's story flowed outward, it began to create new patterns in the fabric of existence, patterns that would ensure the possibility of harmony would always exist, no matter how great the chaos or division. Their shared experiences became fundamental laws woven into reality itself, the possibility of love transcending boundaries, the potential for understanding to bridge seemingly insurmountable differences, the power of wisdom to transform chaos into harmony. As their story merged with existence, something remarkable happened. Instead of losing themselves in this complete sharing, their bond grew even stronger. Their love and understanding had become part of the very foundation of reality, while their individual essence remained beautifully intact. The Time Weaver watched with approval as the process completed itself. "You have done more than create a school or teach harmony," it declared. "You have ensured that the possibility of balance and understanding will always exist in all times and places. Your story is now part of the fundamental structure of existence itself." Looking around the temple grounds, Kai and Kano could see the impact of their sharing. The sacred spaces glowed with new awareness, the very stones seeming to pulse with the understanding they had integrated. Their students' eyes shone with deeper comprehension, each one now carrying within them the original pattern of harmony they had created. Luna stepped forward, her dual nature now perfectly balanced. "Your story has become our story," she said softly, "and through us, it will continue to grow and evolve, creating new patterns of harmony we can't yet imagine." The transformed Void Walker added its own insight. What began as chaos seeking to destroy has become part of the very pattern that ensures harmony will always be possible. This is the greatest transformation of all. As the magnitude of what they had accomplished settled over the temple, Kai turned to Kano. "All those years ago," he said, "when you found me in the storm, did you ever imagine we would come this far?" Kano's scales shimmered with love and pride. "The greatest journeys," the python replied, "often begin with the simplest choices. I chose to love you, and that choice created possibilities beyond imagination." The Time Weaver nodded in agreement. "And now those possibilities are woven into existence itself. Your story will continue to inspire and guide others, not just through teaching, but through the very fabric of reality." Looking out over the temple grounds, where beings from all realms, times, and possibilities gathered in harmony, Kai and Kano understood that their journey had not really ended. It had become part of something even greater. Their love and understanding would continue to create new patterns of harmony, rippling out through existence in ways they could never fully know. The mountain winds carried their story to every corner of reality, not just as a tale to be told, but as a fundamental possibility woven into existence itself. The temple of the Jade Serpent stood as a living testament to what they had achieved, but their true legacy was far greater. They had ensured that harmony would always be possible, that love could always bridge divides, that understanding could always transform chaos into beauty. As the sun set on this chapter of their journey, Kai and Kano knew that every ending was indeed just another beginning seen from a different perspective. Their story had become part of the eternal dance of existence, a reminder that the greatest magic of all lies not in power or prophecy, but in the simple choice to love, understand, and grow together. The giant white python and his human son had transformed not just themselves, not just their temple, but the very nature of reality itself. Their bond had become a fundamental force, ensuring that no matter what challenges arose, the possibility of harmony would always exist, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to choose love over fear, understanding over division, and wisdom over power. And so their story became the origin story, not ending, but eternally beginning anew in every heart that chose to seek harmony, in every soul that dared to bridge divides, in every being that discovered the transformative power of unconditional love. The temple of the Jade Serpent continued its sacred work, now carrying within its very foundations the pattern of possibility they had created. A pattern that would inspire and guide beings across all realms, times, and possibilities forevermore. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.